the feed room is, the spatial between where, and they've seen the pictures, where the feed room is compared to where Maggie's body was, compared to where the quail pens are, where the doghouse is. I mean, you just can't really appreciate the spatial issues.
Hello and good morning. I am just now live streaming. I don't have my microphone. I think they're discussing whether or not the jurors are going to take a field trip out to the Moselle property. I probably will not be live streaming long. I have places I need to go, and I wish there were a way I could stream and share my screen portably, but there's not. So at least not right now. I'll just push on mute and we'll see how far this goes.
Vote, but he did ask the jury. It was sometime in the dark ages of the early 80s.
And we certainly would object to putting any sort of vote to the jury at this point in time. I've never heard of any such a thing. Generally, jury views are at the request of a party, and
I'm requesting.
Well, again, I don't know that it's necessary in this particular instance, or that it would be a particular help or aid to the jury. And if anything, it may confuse the issues again, because the property has changed since the night of June 7th, 2021.
All right. Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. Upon request of either side, the court will allow a jury view. I will not ask the jury to decide whether or not they want to view. I think that could invite premature deliberations in the case, or just the mere fact that they would have to discuss that issue, I think would invite premature discussions of relevant facts, what might be relevant facts. If either side wants a jury view, the court will arrange a jury view, and the court will go. The lawyers may go if you want to go. Of course, there are so many lawyers. That's a mammoth team in of itself. And I can advise the jury as part of the going to the scene that the certain things may not be the same as they were 2 years ago, whenever the period of time was. So if the defense wants a jury view, then the court will arrange a jury view.
Your Honor, thank you. And I just bring this to the court's attention. There were literally dozens of people at Moselle last weekend trespassing to get selfies in front of the feed room. I mean, most distasteful kinds of things I've ever seen. So perhaps before they head out there, some of the security could be in place, and so they
have law enforcement security saying ensure that no one is there.
I would be afraid as a juror someone would recognize or,
John Marvin, his brother, is maintaining that property. He had to call the sheriff's department to come remove him. And it seems they have they're sort of a carnival attitude about this case than what we have to deal with. So I don't want the jury influenced by, crazy paparazzi. I don't think there's really any.
No one can be there. The scene will be secure. No one will be there during a jury view. Now, do you want a jury view? Does the defense want a jury view?
I do. I just want to ensure that the security is not caught unawares about what a circus is going to be outside the property. And they've got the authority to close off the road. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not telling them how to do their job, but I am suggesting these are things that we became aware of over the weekend.
All right. We'll arrange for a jury view with law enforcement. All right. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Hey, you may bring the jury. All right, thank you. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, welcome back. Once again, day number 25. The defense's case, you may proceed.
Court, Your Honor. The defense would call Dr. Jonathan Eisenstadt to the stand, please. And Your Honor, while he's coming around, Dr. Eisenstadt, the pathologist, we're going to be, first of all, showing some pretty graphic photos on the computer and the Elmo. And secondly, we're going to be talking about some pretty graphic details. So we will be offering exhibits. We should, we don't have to do it out of the gate. It's certainly 10 minutes into this testimony. We're going to be showing some pictures and discussing matters that are going to be pretty graphic. So a number of these exhibits, not all of them, but 90% of them, we're going to move to introduce under seal. Some of them are already introduced under seal. And we've warned the family that if it gets too graphic, they can leave. So if Your Honor sees some of the Murdaughs get up walking out, that would be because it's, again, extremely graphic. So,
Good morning. Good morning. Raise your right hand. Stand by the Bible. Do you affirm the testimony about to give the court in this trial shall be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And you take a seat in the witness stand. You can adjust the mic. Please state your name again for the record. Spell your last name.
Jonathan Eisenstadt, E-I-S-E-N-S-T-A-T.
Doctor, what do you do for a living?
I am a medical doctor who specializes in forensic pathology.
And where do you practice medicine?
In the state of Georgia.
Could you tell the jury, please, what forensic pathology is?
Sure. Forensic pathology is a subset of pathology which really deals with investigating the cause and the manner of someone's death.
Okay, and let's get a little bit of your history. So if, and I'm looking at this, you went to the same medical school as Dr. Reamer?
I did.
And then after, I think you went to University of California, Davis undergraduate?
That's correct. I grew up in California.
Graduated from there in 93. You went to the Sackler School of Medicine, as did Dr. Reamer, and you graduated in 98.
Yes, sir.
And then you did a residency where?
Well, when I came out of medical school, I initially wanted to be a surgeon. So I started out in general surgery in Staten Island, New York, and quickly realized it was not the profession I wanted. Beautiful profession, but not for me. So I transferred into a pathology program. This is all up in New York, out in Long Island. And to become a forensic pathologist, you first have to do what's called anatomic pathology, which is hospital-based pathology. If you've ever had anything taken out of your body, surgery or blood or anything, that goes to the pathology department. We look at it, we diagnose it, we tell your doctor, and your doctor will tell you what the diagnosis is. After doing all of that training, I did a year of pediatric pathology at New York University to study diseases of childhood. After that, I did a year of forensic pathology fellowship in the Office of Chief Medical Examiner in New York City, and then stayed on one more year in New York City as a medical examiner or forensic pathologist while doing more training in forensic neuro and cardiac pathology.
And that would have been in 2000, well, that would have been through 2004.
Correct. My forensic pathology training started in 2004 to 2005. And then from 2005 to 2006, I did my forensic neuro and forensic cardiac training.
So would that have been with the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner of the city? Who would that have been with?
With the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner in New York City.
Okay, and how long did you do that?
Well, the forensic pathology was 1 year. The forensic neuro and cardiac was another year. So that's 2 total.
Okay. At some point, did you leave New York?
Yes, after I completed those forensic subspecialties, I was offered a job at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in Atlanta. I accepted the job and moved to Atlanta in July of 2006.
Did the Georgia, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation have their own medical examiner?
Yes, so the state of Georgia, there are, Metro Atlanta has its own medical examiner offices. So there's Fulton County, Cobb, DeKalb, and Gwinnett. So 4 of the 159 counties in the state of Georgia has their own medical examiner.
Per county or total?
Per county. So
Okay.
1 for each of those counties.
Okay.
And then the GBI, for short, covers the other 155 counties in the state. And when I first started there were, I believe, 5 or 6 offices. And then over time, it sort of shrunk down to 3 offices. And I was at the headquarters office in Atlanta.
So when you initially started with a medical examiner's office in Georgia, who did you start with?
So I was with the GBI as my full-time job.
Right.
But I did do some moonlighting pretty much at the Fulton County office, the Cobb County office, and the DeKalb County office.
So those 3 counties they comprise the metropolitan area of what city?
Of Atlanta.
Okay. So, and is that a rather large metropolitan area?
Yes, that's why each one of those counties have their own freestanding medical examiner office.
But you did part-time work for all 3?
Yes, and I actually still do now for Fulton County and then hopefully soon one of the other counties.
Okay. So, tell me about your work with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and how did that differ from what you were doing for these other counties?
So at the GBI, that was my full-time job.
What did you do? What was your job?
Oh, my job was as one of the workhorse pathologists doing, when I first started, I believe it was about 250 autopsies each year. And then as time went on, the caseloads increased. And so I would say I was doing anywhere between 250 to maybe 350 autopsies per year. I would be testifying in court. We had residents that would rotate. So the hospital pathology residents would rotate in our office. We would lecture. And then that went until 2014 when I was promoted to deputy chief medical examiner.
Okay. Now, the autopsies you were doing, and would you generate reports for each one of those? Absolutely. And were these, you indicated early in your career, you were doing general pathology. That is, if you had a polyp taken out during your colonoscopy, you would be doing those.
Yes, that's a requirement to be able to take the forensic pathology fellowship and boards.
So at this stage in your career, when you're doing autopsies, typically, how did those folks expire?
So those are sudden, unexpected deaths, whether they are we don't know what happened. You know, a 45-year-old individual found dead in their residence. No one knows why they died. We would get those cases. But then obviously all of the traumatic and non-natural deaths would be investigated by the medical examiner. So anything from car accidents to gunshot wounds, stab wounds, fights and somebody died, things of that sort.
Okay. So you did autopsies on people who died of under traumatic circumstances,
Absolutely.
including gunshots.
Yes.
And now you just indicated promoted to deputy chief medical examiner for the GBI. How did that change your duties?
So that added a little bit of administrative duties. Thus, I sort of dropped back a little bit in the number of cases. So I probably at that time, I would be doing about 200 autopsies. That was just for 1 year until 2015. So maybe about 100 autopsies, but now I was overseeing other doctors, investigators, and then we have a unit at the GBI, which is called the Child Abuse Investigative Support Center. And so we would actually I oversaw it, but I wasn't the doctor in it. So I know that sounds a little weird, but the person who did most of the work in that was a doctor and an investigator. But as I moved up, that sort of became under the umbrella of what I would oversee.
Were those child deaths or?
They were living consults and deaths. So district attorneys or CFR the Child Protective Services from around the state may come and ask, hey, is this an accidental injury? Could the child have fallen off a bike, or is this abuse?
And did you review those cases?
Oh, a few of them, but really the vast majority was done by one of the other doctors.
Were you still reviewing death cases?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so if somebody did an autopsy on somebody who died of trauma, would you review their findings and the evidence?
Well, I was doing plenty of autopsies still myself. And what we had started doing was we would do rounds on all of the bodies that were in the morgue in the morning. And so we would discuss them all. It really wasn't, and then in the afternoon, we would revisit all of those in a meeting and discuss, hey, does this look, if we're focusing on gunshots, do you think this is a contact, a close range, a distant range? If we're not sure about the directionality, we would discuss that. That wasn't specifically me, that was all the doctors. But then when I became chief, all of that became, the scheduling and the meetings would become my responsibility.
So, and after you were the deputy, what happened?
So then in November of 2015, I became the chief medical examiner for the state.
For the state of Georgia?
Yes, sir.
And were you continuing to do autopsies?
I did because I wanted to, I didn't want to lose my skills. So I did continue doing autopsies. At that time, I dropped down to about 100 autopsies that I personally performed per year. But I was now involved in more policy writing, administrative duties, going down to the legislature and lecturing, it was during the opioid epidemic. So there were a lot of things going on. But if there was a case that was very difficult, it's written in the policy of the GBI medical examiner's office that the chief medical examiner was the final arbiter of those cases.
Okay. Now, you did that, you said, until January 22,
That's correct.
which would have been last year.
Yes, sir.
Now, have you been doing other things during that period of time in addition to being chief medical examiner?
Well, yes, I was doing some consulting work. I would do that at night and on the weekends, unless I, was in deposition, then I'd take personal leave to go do that. But those were the two main things I was doing.
Did you form a private consulting firm in 2008?
I did. Not in 2008. I started my first consulting case was in 2008. It was a cardiac death in New York, and the ME's office in New York referred the attorney to me. But I don't believe I started my actual, business probably until about 2013 or 14.
Okay, I've misread this. So tell us what that is called and what you do.
So that's called Eisenstadt Forensic Pathology. It's nothing fancy. And really what I do is an attorney or a family may call me, ask me to review a case or to perform a private autopsy. And if I have the time, I'll accept that. I'll look over the documents. I may do an autopsy if that's what the family's requested. And then if it's an autopsy, I'll tell the family what my findings were. And, I recently had one where I referred the family to I told them to go to their cardiologist and get tested because I believe the person had a genetic disease that could be transmitted to their offspring. If it's just a record review, I'll review the records and I will tell the attorney what my opinions are. If my opinions support what they are hoping, then I may hear back from them. If my opinions don't, I probably don't ever hear back from them.
So did you have permission from the GBI to do that?
I did. While I was at the GBI, every single consult case that I did, I got written approval by my superior, who was the deputy director of the agency.
Now, have you ever been qualified to testify as an expert in the area of forensic pathology, especially in gunshot wounds, in any state or federal courts?
Yes. So throughout the state of Georgia, obviously, as far as gunshot wounds in other states, I've been qualified as an expert in forensic pathology in a number of states.
How many states have you been qualified to testify in as forensic pathologist?
Oh,
Just,
probably in the area of 20, 25.
okay. And you've been qualified in the state of Georgia by both state and federal courts to testify about gunshot wounds specifically.
Yes, sir.
And have you done autopsies on people who are the victims of a shotgun wound?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You have any idea on how many occasions you've done that?
Oh, I'm sure myself, I've probably done, 75 to 100 or something to that effect, and then been involved in many more.
Okay. Tell me what the National Association of Medical Examiners is.
So that's actually the primary national organization that, every profession has their own national organization. And for us, for short, we call it NAME. NAME is really the main national organization for forensic pathologists. And they write position papers. We have annual meetings. There's a journal that comes through that organization. So it's the prime organization for forensic pathologists.
And do you enjoy any position with NAME?
I do.
What position or positions?
So I'm currently on the board of directors, and I sit on a few committees for NAME.
Okay. Now, you're licensed in the state of Georgia and New York?
Not New York anymore. When I left New York, I let my license lapse because I had a feeling I wasn't going back for quite a while. So currently I'm licensed in Georgia.
Are you board certified
Yes, sir.
in forensic pathology?
Yes, sir.
And you've got a number of different articles and books, and you teach at what schools?
So I was teaching at Augusta University, and that's the medical school that the Forensic Pathology Fellowship Training Program that I started at GBI, they were the sponsoring agency. But I've lectured at St. Louis University at their master's course in death investigation. I've lectured all over the state of Georgia to law enforcement, to coroners.
How about Emory School of Medicine?
Yes, well, at Emory, we had residents and fellows that would rotate through the medical examiner's office in Fulton County, as well as actually GBI. So we would teach them as well.
Okay, Your Honor, I'd move to have Dr. Eisenstadt qualified as an expert in the area of forensic pathology.
Says the state.
No objection, Your Honor.
He's so qualified.
Okay, let me talk to you. Well, let's get to this before they get to it. Are you being paid for your when I say paid for your testimony, are you being compensated to evaluate and testify?
Yes, I'm being compensated for my work.
And how much are you being paid?
So up until this point, I've been paid $3,000. And then I have another invoice that will come out after trial, which will probably be a number of thousands of dollars. I don't recall exactly.
Okay, you compensated by the hour or by the task or what?
No, by the hour. So when I review documents, I charge $600 an hour. And then for testimony, I charge per day, so 24 hours, and that's $5,500 per the day.
Okay. So, and is that unusual for doctors who testify, consult and testify, or is that the normal practice?
In my field of forensic pathology, I've been told I actually undercharge, but there's some that charge less than me, there's some that charge more than me.
Okay, I've got a number of topics I want to talk to you about today, but some testimony we had last week, I was going to say earlier this week, the weeks are beginning to mush together.
Objection, comments?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I'm an old guy, I forget things. I'm not sure what week it was. I apologize to the court and the state for my faulty memory.
Yes, you may proceed.
So sometime, I believe last week, we heard from the coroner of Colleton County. Did you watch that testimony or hear that testimony?
Not the coroner. I saw Dr. Reimers, the medical examiners, but I did not see the coroners.
Okay, tell the jury, please, if a medical examiner or coroner comes on the scene of a suspected homicide, how would one, as a physician or medical examiner, how would one determine time of death? What procedure would you follow?
Oh, well, whether it be a homicide or not, any death scene, you want to try to get an idea. It's not an exact science, but you want to try to get an idea of what the body temperature is as compared to the ambient temperature.
Why?
Why? Because it can give you an idea of how long the body has been there. But there's a lot of factors. So the way that I always taught the investigators and coroners is if you walk into a room or you walk into an environment where there's a dead body, the first thing you do is put a thermometer down. Don't look at the thermostat on the wall. Don't look at the computer to see what it says. Put the thermostat down, look in the area, start your investigation. Come back and look at the thermometer. That will be your ambient temperature.
Ambient temperature means what?
The temperature of the air in that area.
Okay.
And obviously you want to put it near where the body is. And then you take the thermometer and you do a rectal temperature. You put it in the rectum, but you leave it there and you start doing more of your scene investigation. Then you come back, you take it out, and then you have the closest to what we can get for a core body temperature. And you document those two. And then there's other things you look at. You look at blood settling, and you look at what's called rigidity, so stiffening of the muscles.
So why would you want a core temperature and an ambient temperature? What do you do with that?
Well, then you can, the body will equilibrate.
Well, what?
Will sort of even out with the ambient, so the outside temperature, between 1 to 1.5 degrees per hour. I will say it's not an exact science, because obviously if, right now I'm sure my body temperature is a little higher because I'm on the stand. So I may not be 98.6 degrees right now, which is normal.
And if you were to die right now, it would not be appropriate. I'm not saying you should die right now, but so your temperature's up a little bit. Does that mean that you would start at in your calculations at a higher temperature? What would you do?
Right, so that's the problem, is that, let's say I'm 99.5 right now, so that's 1 degree higher. That already moved, we're starting to move that time frame out to it could have an hour faultiness to what you're going to do. So it's 100 degrees outside. My core body temperature is 99 degrees, so we have 1 degree difference. So you may say it's been about an hour, but unfortunately television shows have made it seem like you can say it happened at this time. But in all honesty, you can't, but by far the best methodology is to do a core body temperature.
And an ambient temperature.
And an ambient temperature, yes.
So tell me what you would learn by sticking your hand under the armpit of a deceased.
You wouldn't learn anything.
Really?
Well, you may learn that the arm can't come down because of rigidity, but as far as temperature, you have your own body temperature. You have, you're sticking it in an armpit, which is exposed to the ambient temperature. So that it's just not a valid method to try to make a determination of time of death.
Just a guess.
It's a guess, yes.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, we're going to be dealing with some sealed material. Is that TV off over there? What now? This? Right, so I'm just trying to make sure. We're good. I want to make sure this girl can see. Okay. So at our request, we're Mr. Murdaugh's lawyers, did you examine materials in this case?
Yes, sir, I did.
And let me first of all ask you if you examined these two documents. Just the autopsy. Oh, I'm sorry. Autopsy report. Okay. Your Honor, I'm showing the witness defendants exhibit 177 and 178.
So 178, yes.
And tell us what that is.
That is the Medical University of South Carolina's autopsy file. So it's more than just the report. It's essentially the file for the medical examiner.
Okay. And you examined this.
Yes, sir, I did.
Go ahead. What's the next one?
So 177 I did examine, and this is the MUSC file for Maggie.
This being 177.
Yes, sir.
So Maggie's 177 and Paul is 178.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, we would offer these into evidence.
Your Honor, the state would object to these documents coming into evidence.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Your Honor, Dr. Reamer testified to her reports. These are reports by Dr. Reamer. These are not reports generated by Dr. Eisenstadt. He has reviewed those reports. He can testify to the substance of those reports, but we would object to the reports themselves coming in as evidence.
Says the defense.
Your Honor, these are business records that are kept in the ordinary course of business according to Dr. Reamer. There's certainly nothing in here other than her findings, basically. So we'd object. I mean, these are what Dr. Reamer relied on. These documents, certainly under the business records exception, they would be admissible. I don't quite understand why the state would not want this jury to be able to see. I'm sorry.
The state has objected, so the argument is not why they would not want them.
Business records exception, I'm sorry.
I haven't seen the exhibit. I can't rule without seeing what they are.
Okay, so I don't want to try to like overtalk them, but the significance of that, I swear to God, I don't know what they thought he was going to say if that guy told them he was going to say something different. But he was like, so what can you determine by sticking your hand on the armpit? Absolutely nothing. It blew their other testimony like, bye-bye. It's gone. Insignificant. Oh my God. Pork and beans, what are you doing? This is amazing. Whew, I love it. And yeah, so what I'm writing below, a state trooper pulled up on a scene for Stephen Smith, wrote it as like homicide by blunt force trauma. And the coroner in that area, I don't know if it was the same coroner at the time, the one that testified on this trial, but they're like, no, it was a car accident. And the state trooper called him called the coroner, I'm sorry, and was like, what's going on?
Over objection.
That's not what I testified to. And they're like, yeah,
Come back to these.
just mind your business.
I'm primarily interested in her determinations and some sketches she did that are in that, okay? So you examined her, her report, correct?
Yes, sir.
And could I have the Elmo, please? Can I have those reports? Let's talk about Maggie to begin with, okay?
Okay.
And I'm going to put this on the Elmo. Can you tell me what this is, please?
That's a standard body diagram for a female.
And you reviewed this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's put this on the Elmo. And could I have the easel, what? Oh, you can? Okay, so this would be the body sketches. Maggie. Could I have female? What page is that on? That's no idea. What do you see on your screen?
I see the female body diagram from the autopsy of Maggie Murdoch.
Okay, so let's, you know, if you could put it in that doorway up there. Sure. Allow the jury to see a bit better. Push it back, there you go. So, and let's put this on it. Okay, so by way of, let's walk through the wounds on Maggie, okay?
Okay.
So look at the sketch in front of you and walk the jury through. If you need to come down here with a pointer, or can you do it from up there, whatever is more convenient for you.
There's a lot of writing, so it may be easier for me to point it out. I don't know if this is a touch screen or not.
We had a pointer. We still have, we should have a pointer, but that's okay, we'll do that. Okay, so what I want you to do is step down here, please. And I'd like you to stand so that those jurors over there can see, so you probably need to stand over there.
Sure.
Okay, so how about walk them? Yeah, okay. Walk them through the wounds on Maggie Blue.
So I think the easiest would be to go from bottom up.
Okay,
So we have, these are all rifle wounds. They're all caused by a rifle. We have an entrance wound on the left thigh, and the entrance wound on the left thigh has on the diagram little dots, which is stippling, which makes it an intermediate range rifle wound.
what does that mean, intermediate range?
We're talking up to 1 to 3 feet. The end of the barrel to the actual skin where the bullet goes through.
Okay,
And I agree with what's Dr. Reamer put here. That's the medial left thigh. Now we flip the body over and we have the, on the diagram, so this is now the left side, and we have the corresponding exit wound on the back of the left thigh. So I agree with the range of fire, the directionality, that it's an intermediate range rifle wound.
so you and Dr. Reamer agree?
Yes, we agree on this one.
Okay, next.
Moving up, We can go here to the torso. So we have another entrance rifle wound on the upper right torso. It's, as per, I obviously can't see the inside in this, but as per the autopsy, it goes through a number of organs, goes across, and comes out the bottom left back of the torso. And I agree with that, with her finding on that as well.
Let me interrupt you one second.
Yes, sir.
Prior to your agreement or disagreement, did you look at the autopsy photos?
Oh, absolutely.
Did you look at her report and her notes?
Absolutely.
Anything else you looked at?
I looked at some scene photos, and I believe that was it.
Okay, but you're relying on her photos.
Yes, the most important for me is the autopsy report, the autopsy diagram, and the autopsy photos.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, go to the next one.
Okay, so we've talked about one gunshot wound, a rifle wound, 2 rifle wounds. Now we have a rifle wound on the left wrist and forearm. We have an entrance on the back of the left wrist, which is the dorsal surface, and this is the ventral or volar surface. And the exit is on the volar left forearm. I agree with that as well. I'm sorry, I also looked at x-rays. That was
Okay.
part of the photos. On the x-ray, there are some little fragments of, you can tell it's a rifle round in the left wrist.
And it went through?
It went through, yes,
And entrance on which side?
on the back of the left wrist.
Okay, next.
So we've now talked about 3 of them. Now we have 2. I'll start with the first one, which I agree with her findings, and then the second one is where I have, there's a discrepancy. So if we now look at rifle wound E, which is the one that's here on the back of the head,
Yes.
the directionality is correct, and I can explain why I believe the one on the left breast, the directionality was wrong. But we have a almost tangential, meaning that it doesn't go super deep into the brain. It comes here, but a rifle has a lot of kinetic energy and so it has a lot of force to it, and it can cause severe disruption. And it's coming along here, goes through the brain, and when this one goes through the brain, it causes an injury to the brain stem. That would make her die immediately. So this one came here, and then, which is the entrance on the back right of the head,
And that's labeled what?
that's labeled E.
Okay,
And then you can see on the x-ray, there's a little fragment or a few little fragments in the head. And so a rifle round will fragment. We call it a lead snowstorm. It sort of on x-ray looks like a snowstorm, a bunch of little white pieces. It breaks up. Pieces of projectile come through down into the back and continue down into the right chest. So this is, now remember, we're talking about directionality. This is top, this is bottom. And so on the body, it's going downwards, but obviously we have a moving situation. So if she's like this, it may have been coming straight, but on the body, the directionality is downwards. And there are some up arrows here on the injuries to the upper back. I don't know why, because in her report, they go down. So that's all part of gunshot or rifle wound E. That's actually the lethal rifle wound,
Okay.
immediately lethal. And now I'll focus on A, C, and then the abrasion or the graze wound of the abdomen. And this is where I differ in opinion of directionality.
so you agree with her on everything except this one?
On Maggie, that's correct.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So if we look at the autopsy photos, that's going to be extremely important.
We will in a minute.
Okay. So we do have a wound on the left breast. We do have a wound on the left chin, and we do have this abrasion under the left breast. And sometimes there are characteristics that we look for to try to give us directionality of these superficial gunshot or rifle wounds. And what you're looking for when it's a tangential wound is you're looking for skin tags. So
Tell me what a skin tag is.
sure. So if you think about it, if a bullet is coming and it hits the skin, and you can see how it's pushing the skin like this, so you're going to get these tears in the skin. And the tears in the skin are going to be in the direction that the bullet's coming. But if you let that go, between those two tears is a triangular piece of tissue left, right? So we have a tear over here, we have a tear over here, and then you let it go and you have a skin tag. You have a piece of tissue pointing in the direction that the bullet came from. And so when I look at the picture of the rifle wound to the back of the head, you can see all of those skin tags are pointing up this way, so the bullet came here. When I look at the left breast and I look at the wound to the left side of the head, or excuse me, the left chin or jaw, I see skin tags pointing this way. So that would make this rifle wound come from here. It would be superficial, but remember we have all of that kinetic energy. So that's why we get the splitting of the skin, the fracture of the chin, then it comes down through the breast, and then it grazes the upper left chest. And it sort of makes sense when you think about it. If a person is leaning forward and you've got one going down this way, you've got another one going essentially in the same exact direction. So there's the scientific aspect by looking at the actual outline or the actual look of the wound. And then you also have two wounds from a rifle that are right next to each other going in the same direction.
And you indicate that both of the directions of both of those, one that goes down this way to the and severs the brainstem, and then the other one that goes down and through her breast. I mean, unless somebody were very, very tall, is there an explanation on how those wounds would have come about?
Yes. So, I mean, really, we know it's coming from the top of the head downwards, right? So unless someone is standing in an elevated position or someone is lying down on their stomach and then you have a sniper who's on the ground going this way, really, and we see this in people who are going to open the door because someone's knocking on the door and a gunshot comes through. If you're leaning, as I was saying earlier, if you're leaning forward, let's say the first shot here gives her significant pain. I agree with Dr. Reamer on that. And she's leaning over like this, then if I don't want to hit you, I'm sorry. I have a gunshot coming like this. Now I look at it, the body lying flat on the table, you can see how it goes straight down. So the explanation that I think is probably most feasible here is that she's leaning forward, most likely probably in pain from the abdominal wound.
And the second shot?
Same thing.
So she's leaning forward, one back here, and where does the second shot come?
The second shot goes right next to the left ear, and on the autopsy photos, you can see a ring of a contusion or a bruise, and it looks very, very similar to her earring that was found there. And again, that's from the energy would push the earring up. The bullet comes down, goes through the breast and out.
So that shot blew her earlobe off or blew,
Pretty much, yes.
and the ring goes, they find at the scene, right?
Correct.
Okay, so let's walk through the photos, and if you'll stay right where you are, and then I'm going to maybe have you draw something up there. I haven't quite decided yet. Could I have Defendant's Exhibit 169, please? And I remind everyone we should be covered for this. Nope. I'm sorry, 159, not your fault. Right, and again, I apologize for the graphic nature, but this is what you do every day, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so tell us what this depicts.
So this depicts Maggie's body on the autopsy table. And when we're doing our measurements on a body, that's how we're looking at the body, lying on her back or on the person's back on the autopsy table. And we're looking at the left side. Here is that wound with the left ear and the left chin. And here's her left breast. And then right above this wound here, we have that semicircle, which is consistent with the earring.
So this is the shot you would disagree with Dr. Reamer about.
Yes, this is the only shot I disagree with.
And her explanation of this was what? I mean, what was it was going up?
Yeah, she stated that it was going upwards.
It would have entered the breast and then gone up?
Right.
And the reason you disagree with that is?
Well, number one, there's skin tags. When we look closer at the breast and we look closer at the left side of the chin, skin tags are pointing upwards, showing that that's where the bullet came from. And the other is, there's also a part of our job where just sort of common sense, and it just seems very odd that when you have one going this way, you have to be in a very bizarre position to be able to get it to go up. But from the scientific standpoint, it's how the wound looks.
And you believe those wounds are caused by bullets fired in succession?
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. Could we go to, Defendant's Exhibit 160. What does this depict?
So this is the left side of her jaw, and it's pulled forward, but you can see up here, I'll use my finger. You see the skin tag is pointing this way, right? The laceration is coming down here. And if I were to flip this back up, these skin tags point up as well.
Point out a skin tag again.
This is a great example of a skin tag that is like this.
Could you blow that up a little bit for me, please? Right around right below the ear. Yeah, right in there. That's perfect. Okay, show me the skin tag.
Okay. Well, if we were to, you see here that this is sort of in a triangular shape, and if I flipped it back up, it would fit right into here.
Right.
And so the skin tag is pointing upwards in the directionality of where the bullet comes. It'll be easier to see on the breast, actually.
Okay. So could we go to this one?
Yes.
Okay, that would be Defendant's Exhibit 161. Okay, tell me, is that the area you want? Does that help?
Yes, but I think before we blow it up, I think what's important is for orientation purposes, you can see that her head is up here. So this would be up, this would be down.
Okay.
And now if we need to blow that up, you can see the skin tags are pointing up. The lacerations, the splitting in the skin is pointing down. So that indicates an up to down directionality.
Okay. And could we see State's Exhibit 498? Tell me what this depicts.
This is a beautiful depiction. I don't mean to use that word. I'm sorry.
Beautiful is
I
not.
didn't mean that. That's from a forensic pathologist. It's a classic book example of the lacerations coming and pointing downwards. The skin tags are pointing upwards. So skin tag, skin tag, skin tag, all pointing up where the bullet's coming from. The lacerations are pointing down, which is the direction the bullet's going in.
Now, did you and Dr. Reamer agree or disagree on this?
We agreed on this.
Okay. Now, the other thing is, it appears her head was shaved. Why is that?
Right, so any gunshot wound to the head, if you're trying to make a determination of entrance or exit, or trying to get a better idea of what it looks like, you also want to look for if there's any gunshot residue. you shave that area. So most of the time is to look at the actual outline of it. Sometimes it's to preserve evidence for further testing.
Okay, could I have 168, please? And what is this an X-ray of?
So this is an X-ray of her head and neck, and it might be hard to see, but we have right here in the center, we have a fragment of possibly jacketing or a fragment of a projectile right here in the midline with a few smaller pieces. We have nothing over on the left side where this injury is. So nothing went in here and stayed. All of the projectiles, and then we'll continue down to the chest. It's one rifle that went down, and then you'll see that lead snowstorm, which is consistent with it going back in to the back and down to the chest.
Okay, and could you go to 169, please?
So you can see here how it continues down into the right chest, and it sort of looks like a snowstorm. That's a rifle round.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead and take the stand, please. So your job is to look at the photos and determine whether or not the original pathologist was correct or incorrect. That's what we hired you to do, right?
Well, really what you asked me to do was look at the autopsy report, look at the photos, and give my opinion on the gunshot wounds. That was it. I wasn't even asked to say, I wasn't even asked, is she right or wrong? You just asked me to look at them and give you my opinion.
And how many bullet holes do we have here? How many shots?
Well, we have 5 shots.
And of the 5, you agree with her on 4
Yes, sir.
and disagree with her on 1.
Correct.
Okay. So let's move on for just a moment, and let's look at, we'll go to Paul's autopsy report, and we'll go to his sketch. Let me get this material away. Okay, let me put this, jumble things up. So let's have him step down again with your pointer, please. It's right here. Your Honor, making a approach. Thank you. So how about detail what she indicates are the wounds to Paul? And we'll start at, I guess, at the bottom and go up.
Sure.
Okay.
So there's 2 shotgun wounds to Paul. One is on the chest and one is on the head.
Okay, let's talk about the chest wound first.
Sure. So the chest wound is also an intermediate range, so 1 to 3 feet. Shotgun wound that goes across the chest, does not enter into the chest cavity, and leaves near the armpit, and then the pellets themselves disperse, and some of them go through the arm. I agree with her on that, both on the range of fire and the directionality.
Okay. So the other shot resulted in his head exploding.
Correct.
Okay. Explain to the jury what she said and then what you believe, and we'll talk about why the difference is in just a minute. Okay?
Sure. So in her autopsy report, she stated that she believed the entrance was coming from the left side, went up, and then it exited the top of the head. To me, this is a contact range shotgun wound to the top of the head that caused extreme pressure buildup in the head from it being contact, leading to these types of fractures, and that the pellets, so the shotgun wound comes in, the wadding will start to open up. All of that pressure basically for lack of a better term, will explode what's there because the pressure needs to get out somehow. And then the head would have been down like this, and the pellets lodged here and went into the left shoulder. And then you can see that the pellets are going down into the tissues of the left shoulder.
So you believe the wound that resulted in his head exploding was where? Where would the shotgun have been?
Well, it would have been to the top back of his head.
And how far away from the head?
Oh, no, it would have been pressed against the head.
So it'd be a contact wound to the back of the head.
Correct.
And that would result in, and we're going to talk about this in a little more detail in a minute. But if it was in the back of the head, tell me how we have a hole here and then a wound here. How does that work?
Well, you're shooting, it's different than shooting into a space where it can expand. It's not up against a firm surface. So shooting into the abdomen is different. The pressure will still go in if it's a contact to the abdomen, but the abdomen can stretch, the pressure and the gas can disperse because it's sort of an open space with skin that can stretch out and back. The skull really only has one hole at the very bottom. So if I were to take a shotgun and press it against this pile of paper here, and I were to shoot it, this paper would blow up because the pressure has nowhere to go, so it's got to blow everything up that's right there. If I were to take that shotgun and shoot it from here, the pressure is open. It's open to the free atmosphere, right? So it's going to come out of the barrel and it's going to spread out. It'll go a little distance, and that's why we get soot in close range shotgun wounds. It'll go a little distance, but then it'll disperse. So if I were here and I were to shoot down at this paper, the paper is going to get a whole bunch of holes in it, but it's not going to completely explode.
And this is birdshot, correct?
In the head, it's birdshot.
In the chest, it was?
It appears that it was buckshot.
Okay. Now, so her opinion was, and tell me the path.
So unfortunately, the top of the head wasn't shaved, so I can't tell you the exact entrance, but it absolutely is a contact range shotgun wound to the head. And from the way it was described by Dr. Reamer, what she described as the exit wound was that it was near the top of the head and a little bit back on the right. So probably right about here.
Okay. Now, let me talk to you a bit. If you take the witness stand again, please. Defense Exhibit 116. Okay, so, yeah, if you can blow that up a little bit. This is in evidence. Where did this exhibit come from? Is there a book?
Yes, this is from the main textbook on gunshot wounds by Vincent DeMeo.
And it has been described as the Bible gunshot wounds, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, here we go. And that's, I think we asked Dr. Reamer about this book and she agreed, right?
Yes, sir.
And this sketch or these pictures are from that book.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So this depicts a shotgun shell being fired, correct?
Yes, sir.
And tell the jury, please, this is the initial firing, correct?
The very top image, correct.
And what is that coming out?
What's coming out are actually flames and gas. So sometimes you'll see a little bit of burning because the gunpowder is ignited. So you have a little bit of flame and then gas.
Now, if they had shaved Paul's head, which they did not, correct?
Correct.
Would they have seen some evidence of that gas and flame coming out?
I would say most likely, yes. You don't always see it. But yeah, most likely there would be some soot or what we call searing, burning.
Okay, the next one down, B, what is that showing us?
So now what we're seeing is at the front, you can see all the pellets that are still sort of in a cylindrical form because the wadding itself has not completely opened up yet. So, you know, the pellets are all, you have a plastic tube in essence, and then the pellets are all at the top, and then there's a piece of wadding, so like a plastic disc or something, and then underneath it, you have the gunpowder. The gunpowder gets ignited, the heat builds up the pressure, it pushes out the plastic tube through the barrel of the weapon, and that's when that first image, you see that. The second image, you see that we still have all of the shot, or the pellets are still within the plastic tube. And so that's going to go for a little distance. Behind it, we see the cloud of gas. We see the pressure from the cloud of gas. And this is still very early on in the shot.
Okay, and what's the next, C? What does that depict?
Right, so now we're a little bit further out, a little bit later after the weapon's been fired. We still see that the pellets are in sort of a cylindrical form, and you can see that the cloud of gas is getting bigger, right? The reason the cloud of gas is getting bigger here is because it's going to go where? Via the path of least resistance. So it's going out into the atmosphere. This is not pressed against anything. This is just if I were shooting in the air and the gas is coming out.
And the last one, D?
A little further on, you can now see the pellets are just starting to separate. And we see this big cloud of gas. So the pressure is dispersing outwards into the atmosphere.
And if we had another shot, 3 feet down or 4 feet down, what would be happening with those pellets?
So now you're starting to get individual pellets that are, the pellets would be opening up. So they wouldn't still be in that cylinder. If we're talking 3-4 feet or further. So on the skin, we would start seeing a little outline of individual holes from individual pellets. It's not like they all have separated yet, but we would see some.
10 feet, would they be separated?
Oh, yes,
Okay, and so you see a pattern of shot,
correct,
individual pellets.
correct.
Okay, so let's follow this back. If, let's go with her scenario first.
Okay,
And the testimony, I think, has been 3 feet. The muzzle of the shotgun was 3 feet from, and let me maybe put one of these in. Let's see which one of these is what we want. Okay, let me have States Exhibit 478, please. Now, the wound in the center of his chest, you and she agree on directionality. It came out under his arm. Pellets penetrated his arm and then went on, I think we've heard, out the back window.
right. So directionality and range of fire, I agree with her on that one.
Okay, so when you look at the wound in his shoulder and his neck, and of course, his head, tell us where Dr. Reamer got it wrong.
Well, I think she has it reversed. And the reason being is, now that you've seen where all the pressure would go, if the entrance wound is here on the left shoulder, and we're saying that we're at least 3 to 4 feet away from there because we have no soot, we have no stippling on the skin, then by the time it gets to the left side of the chin or over here at the angle of the mandible, the jaw, we've lost a lot of energy. And so, yes, you can get some pellets still going up into the head, but you're not going to have the top of the head completely blown off. And if you look at the photograph here, you can see, for all of us, it curves over and goes around because the top of our skull's there. If you look here, it goes flat. He's missing the top of his skull. That would not have happened from a 3 to 4 foot, 3 feet or further shotgun wound coming in on the left side.
And the wound on his shoulder, let's look at that real quick. Shoulder, please. That's a pretty big wound, is it not?
It is, and there's pellets that are going down into the tissue.
And what is the evidence of that?
Well, there's photographs that are taken looking down into the wound, and you can see pellets there, and there are x-rays that are taken that you can see there's pellets down into the left shoulder.
Okay, if you go to Defendant's Exhibit 162. Okay, step down here, please.
Yes, sir. May I?
Your Honor, may you step down? Thank you.
I actually think this is going to help the state prosecution
Stand over
because
the corner.
now the
Show the
jurors-
jury, please, the individual pellets.
The jurors can understand
Oh,
it
well,
better.
this is probably the easiest one to see. Round and silver. I'm going to have to come around for a moment. I'm sorry. There's one here. There's one here. It's not projecting well, but I know that I saw a few down here, but then on x-ray, it'll become more apparent.
Okay, well, let me do this. Let's go ahead and put the x-ray up while we're talking about this, which would be which one of these you want to start on?
We can do this
Okay.
since we're talking about.
Hold on 1 second. Any objection? Your Honor, I would offer into evidence Defense Exhibit 112 and ask it be put under seal.
No objection.
It's submitted.
All right. Tell us what exhibit you got. Do you have that? 112?
Okay, they're quiet while I'm trying to type. I just said basically with this simplistic understanding and explanation, the jurors can now understand it and the state can help use that newfound understanding to support their theory. Is how I think it. I think all the other people were way too technical and didn't know how to explain this in terms everyday people can understand that may not have a medical, forensic, scientific background. He taught it to people basically who weren't his peers. And I think that was and is going to be beneficial. It would only be beneficial to the defense if it can actually prove their theory, but I think it's actually helping the state's theory, in my opinion. I mean, again, he could have been on the golf cart. He admitted to being on the golf cart, so that's helpful.
It's gonna take some time. Let's just put it on the long road from there.
And I thought it was interesting that the state asked if Alec were a family annihilator. I've seen a lot of people online go, "What is he talking about?" I feel like,
Okay, tell
God,
the jury, please, what we're looking at here.
Sure.
do people not understand any kind of
case that comes
strategy
from a
at
medical
all?
examiner's office that has any type of penetrating injury, the medical examiner will do x-rays to see if there's anything left in the body and then also for safety reasons. But what we're looking at here is this is the spine. These are the ribs. So we're looking at the chest, the left shoulder, because we're coming out here to the left arm. And all of these dots are the pellets from the shotgun wound. And what we can see here is that these pellets are coming down all the way. So this is the first rib right here. First rib is about right here. So we have pellets all the way down to this level.
Is that consistent or inconsistent with the shot being fired from his left, apparently going upward to the
Right.
brain?
That wouldn't be consistent, and the reason being is then it would have to, the pellets would have to go up, curve, and come down, while the rest of them are continuing this way.
Okay. So could I have this one next?
Sure.
Okay. Defense Exhibit 111. I can do Elmo.
I can. You got it, okay, good.
Okay, this should be up on the screen now. Can you, we're talking about the lower right hand, I mean, our
The left side of the body.
left side of the
The
body.
R stands for right, so the x-ray is being taken like this, right side, and this is the left side.
Okay, so could you blow up the lower R right corner, please?
The R stands for right.
Now, what does this depict?
So this is showing here on the left side of the jaw, and we see all of these pellets that are here. So the jaw is right here, and you can see these pellets are in the left side of the jaw, in the neck, and they're going down into the upper left chest.
So, and you believe the directionality on these is down?
Well, from the totality of the evidence, I believe, yes, they're downwards.
Okay. And,
But this x-ray has other findings, I think, that are important for that opinion.
okay,
And, I mean, you can see the severity of the fractures of the skull. The skull should, actually, I think it was better if we were back. The severity, the skull should obviously come all the way around, right?
Mhm.
There's no skull here. That's probably the area where the shotgun was pressed against the head. And we've got all of these fractures. In medical terms, we call it multiple comminuted fractures. This is, I mean, textbook for a contact range shotgun wound to the head, to the top of the head, not down here.
and, okay, so in your opinion, if it had happened the way Dr. Reamer said, you would not have the directionality of those pellets in the shoulder down,
Correct.
and you would not have that kind of devastation to the skull. Wouldn't be enough energy.
That's correct. You may have some what we call linear fractures, so little lines of fractures, but you wouldn't have the top of the skull completely gone.
So explain to me, not being a hunter, how does the gas, you got gas coming first, pellets coming second, right?
Yes, sir.
So how do you get the gas going in and the pellets continuing on?
Well, the pellets are projected by the gas causing pressure to push out the shot and then the pellets within it. So,
Hey, Josanne. Good morning.
think about a rocket that's going up into space, right? So you see all of the cloud underneath the rocket, and the rocket will continue going up, but the cloud goes out because that's the area of least resistance. But the rocket will still continue. So that's pretty much the same mechanism. The shot cup is going to be pushed out. The energy from all of that gas needs to go somewhere. And when it's being pressed up against a firm surface like a skull, that pressure is going to build up. It's going to go through the hole that's caused by the entrance wound, and it's got nowhere else to go. So it is, and of course, this is all happening in milliseconds, but all of that gas is expanding the inside of the skull, and the least resistance is right here at that opening now. So it's going to cause that area to basically pop out.
And some of the pellets would go through, most of the pellets would go through.
Oh, the pellets will continue through. there may be, the brain is not here, right? And so there's probably pellets within the brain, but we don't have an x-ray of the brain.
They didn't x-ray the brain.
Correct.
So, and the skull, I mean, the brain would leave the cavity? Or in this case, did it leave the cavity?
Yes, it did.
And under what kind of force?
I can't give you an exact, number. The forces are usually in what are called newtons, but it's the buildup of that pressure in the skull. It's even in that textbook. Brains being eviscerated in shotgun cases are from contact wounds.
So if you're the person holding the gun to the skull, does any of that energy go up the barrel of the gun?
Well, yes, once that, like I said, it builds up in the head and then it comes back up. So that's what causes the brain to be pushed out. There's going to be pellets that will come out. There'll be other bodily fluids that will come out and will go up along. It'll basically be what we call back spatter or back motion.
But in a violent way.
Yes,
And the person holding that gun, would they be subject to being covered in that material
yes, they would.
in a very forceful way?
Yes.
Okay, so let me show you a couple other pictures. That's this photo, right?
That's that one.
Yeah, okay. Would you put Defense Exhibit 113, please? It's just accurate. I believe this is an evidence. Okay. Tell us what that depicts.
So now we've moved over to the side, to the left, more of the left shoulder and showing some of the left arm. And again, you see how the pellets are sort of dispersed and they're coming down. This is your shoulder blade, your scapula. And so it's even down to the level of the collarbone here and the shoulder blade.
Is
So-
that consistent with a shot coming up and across the shoulder and into the neck, or is it consistent with something coming down?
Well, again, with the totality of everything, this is absolutely going down.
Okay. Now, let me see. State's Exhibit 487. I'm sorry. Tell us what we learned from this.
Well, for lack of a better term, we have no brain or top of skull. It's completely gone with multiple fractures.
And was his hair shaved?
No, sir, it was not.
Would that have been the normal practice, the prudent practice, the required practice?
Yes, I would have liked to have seen it shaved to help determine an entrance versus an exit.
Okay. But with this autopsy photo, you can't really tell. What would you expect if it was an entrance wound? A contact entrance wound?
Right. Well, I can tell with this photograph that it is a contact entrance wound due to the severity of the injury. But what would have been nice is if the hair was shaved, I'd be looking for gunpowder residue. I'd be looking for burning on the skin itself, on the brain itself, and on the skull itself.
So when this goes, well, back up for just a second. The first shot, I believe you agree to the chest that your Dr. Reamer is correct.
I do.
This shot, which would be on the top right back, can you tell, or would you have an opinion as to his posture at the time of that shot?
Well, it's sort of similar to what we were talking about with Maggie, unless somebody is in an elevated position where they're high enough where it can come down like this. He's most likely bent over.
Further than that, about that? I mean,
That's hard for me to say. I mean, his head's over like this because we have the smaller wound, the bigger wound as it's expanding out here. And the directionality goes like that. I can't tell you how far down he was actually bent over.
and why would he be bent over?
Well, the second you get this shot, you're immediately deceased.
No, I'm talking about before the shot.
Right, and so that, and we know that he fell forward, he has abrasions to his face. So that indicates to me that the belly shot was first.
When you say the belly shot.
I'm
Chest.
sorry, the shot that comes across the chest, not the belly. And that would be extremely painful. So that would cause, he may be bent over from the pain and then came this shot.
Would that first shot affect his ability to breathe at all?
It would.
In what way?
Well, Dr. Reamer documented what's called pulmonary contusion.
Hey,
So
Julie.
bruising of the lung. And it's hard on a postmortem x-ray to see if you have what's called a pneumothorax, so air that's around the lung. So it'll be difficult for him to breathe.
Could you take that down, Doug, please? Okay, so you believe that he was in pain as he bent over and then somebody shot him in the top of the head?
Well, yes, this is a painful injury.
Okay. Now, let me ask you about just a couple more things.
Should I go back up?
Yes, please. Well, yeah, go back up.
This happened before the jurors came in today.
Can I have
What I
Defendant's
just,
Exhibit 189, please?
The comment I just penned.
Okay, tell us what this is, please.
So this is, I'm sorry.
Have you seen this before?
Yes, sir, I have.
And is it from the same book as the gunshot, the shotgun?
Yes, it's from the DeMayo gunshot wound book.
And what does it depict? I mean, I'm not telling you specifically what it depicts, but what does it depict?
What the appearance on the body would be at different ranges for shotgun wounds.
Okay. Offer this in evidence, Your Honor.
Your Honor, the state objects, this is hearsay, this is a page from a book by somebody else, not the witness who's testifying.
Your Honor, she had not objected to two other, her witness and this witness relating to the same book, different page. It's a learned treatise, and it's the Bible of gunshot wounds both Dr. Reamer and this witness have testified. It's something they all rely on. I can have them sketch it out, or we can just put this in.
Says the state.
It's hearsay, Your Honor.
That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have you go to the jury room for a break. Please do not discuss the case.
Okay, so this is confusing to me. They didn't say like when, he just said he would permit it. And then I'm gonna have to go back and re-listen because it sounded like he said, I just want to permit it. I don't want the jurors to discuss it. I would normally ask if they would want to go out, but that would mean that they would have to discuss the case. So, but I want them to make the decision, so I'm very confused. But the shed is gone. Half of the crime scene is gone, so like it's completely.
Doctor, this page 189, what is it?
I don't
So
get
this
it.
is a photocopy from a page of the gunshot wound book that gives a pictorial diagram of what different range of fires would look like on the skin of a shotgun wound victim.
Anything else from the state or the defense?
Your Honor, under 803 hearsay.
But that's not
Number
the
18.
crime scene. I mean,
Learned treatises to the extent called to the attention of an expert witness upon cross-examination or relied by and direct statements.
yeah, but he
contained in
didn't
published-
see the
published
actual
treatises,
body. He's doing
periodicals,
that
or
off of
pamphlets
crime scene
on the subject of
photos.
history, medicine, or other science or art, established
I
as a
don't believe
reliable
that's
authority by the
accurate.
testimony admission of the witness or by other expert testimony or by judicial notice, if admitted, may be read into evidence, but may not be received as exhibits. I'm sorry.
Oh shit,
So I'll withdraw it as
Pooters.
an exhibit and I'll have him do a drawing.
All right. Okay, we'll take 15 minutes.
That's pretty funny. Plus, coupled with his witness that's currently testifying saying Harpootlian asked him what. Oh, I gotta mute them. I'm watching Law and
Boy, as the
Crime.
shotgun
Shush.
comes out. You
Shut
see
your
this?
face. Nobody cares. So just remove it from the stream for now. So basically, I don't remember what I was saying. Oh, okay. So the guy is on the stand. Apparently, he's a pathologist, I think that he said. Forensic pathologist. And Dick was asking him, so what would we learn from someone sticking their hand under their armpits? And his witness said, absolutely nothing. Oh my God. I just laughed and laughed, man. So basically, if you remember last week, the defense's witness, the coroner who arrived on the scene, claimed that, or testified that he, when he arrived, he took both Paul and Maggie's temperature under the armpit just by sticking his hand underneath to help determine the time of death. Well, yes, you can take temperature from under the arm, but typically you do it with a thermometer of some sort. And I understand there's debate. I'm not in the medical field by any means, but have had a child who's gone to the hospital and ER more times than I can count. And, technically the most accurate is rectally. And you can do it through their armpit. Normally, I've heard that there's like a 1 or 2 degree difference in accuracy. But again, typically someone has a thermometer when they do that. It's not just their hand. So that was the defense's witness, was the coroner. And he was testifying to how he determined their time of death. I'm so sorry. It's like a shit show. I'm sorry. He defamed sorry. He painted the defense in a bad light, in my opinion. I'm not sure if you're referring to what I'm referring to, but my goodness, I just couldn't help it. Harpootlian, after he said, what would it prove sticking the hand under the armpit? He said, absolutely nothing. I can't help it. And Harpootlian said, really? And I think his face turned 10 shades of, I'm going to rip your head off. Woo! That was real pretty. I enjoyed that thoroughly. Let's see if we've got Mandy or all kind of other people. If I can pull it up, I would find it interesting. I think you guys would find it interesting in hearing the forensic psychologist that I follow on TikTok. He was really covering the Idaho deaths. But then once this started, I don't necessarily blame him for jumping on the bandwagon because I'm not trying to make an account. I'm just trying to sign into TikTok, please. But he explained what a family annihilator is And it won't just let me go into freaking TikTok, man. I don't want to start in a damn account. Oh my God, I've been making fun of these people for way too long, and I'm starting to get the banjo. Actually, that's disrespectful to the Appalachian Mountains, but cool. So it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do it. Where's login? He explains why the state may have mentioned being why the state may have brought up the term family annihilator, why he may have point blank asked Alec if he were a family annihilator. And I'll just kind of describe it and see if I can find him, and then we can play what he said, the forensic psychologist. But he was a family annihilator, again, in my own paraphrasing layman's terms and half remembering, is someone who does not want to do what they feel as though they have to do. They're in a state of desperation. It's not like a crime of passion or, it seems from what I understand that normally it is premeditated, but that it's done out of feeling like that's the only option because of like desperation, situational, financial, whatever. So he feels like the state brought that up because that would be very good to use in closing arguments where they can explain what a family annihilator is and how he fits that mold perfectly. Because a lot of people, especially online, who knows how the jurors feel, we don't know, but they're going on saying like, there's no motive. And first of all, there doesn't have to be a motive. Motive helps, but people take people's lives at a moment's notice for sometimes no reason at all. But as I believe this psychologist goes on to say, you're thinking about it from your mindset, that you don't see a reason to take someone's life in this situation. You have to think it from Alec's mindset. And he had every reason, if not multiple reasons, from his state of mind, from his thought process, to end their lives, yet is still remorseful for what he did, and actually in his mind blames other people for being forced to do what he did. I really feel like that kind of mind frame comes into mind where you hear Janine, his CFO, or maybe she was just an accountant, I'm not sure, lead accountant, if you will, at the law firm, explain his interactions with her when she would approach him. I feel like he had an attitude of, why are you bothering me? What do you want again? Like, why won't you just leave this alone? Why don't you quit looking into this? You're gonna get me in trouble. Instead of someone who would normally think, oh shit, I've been found out. I'm responsible for this. I mean, people still may cover their tracks or attempt to, but their train of thought is very much, someone else is getting me in trouble, without admitting that they are the ones that got themselves into the trouble. Had it not been for their actions, someone would not be confronting them. And I believe that's seen again when Buster takes the stand. I coming from a family like this and being around a lot of people from here, and I hope nobody ever finds this stuff, because God, if you talk about South Carolina, it's like you've talked about someone's mom or Jesus himself. They get very, very angry. It's our culture, it's our tradition. No, jackass. Southern culture, South Carolinian culture, and being extremely fucking dysfunctional are two different things. It just so happens that a lot of you are also dysfunctional and have this mindset where you don't expose someone, you keep quiet, and you actually blame the person exposing as the one causing the issues. It's almost like they themselves are the one that did it instead of the person who actually did XYZ. It's a little more in depth, in my opinion, than projection. Again, my husband and I were talking about it several nights ago. One time he was willingly talking about the Murdaugh saga, and I said, I just don't understand. I just don't understand Buster's behavior when Buster was saying, nobody in my family thinks that Paul was driving the boat. Like, holy crap. Still to this day, after the 4 other surviving people who you knew personally, Buster, who were your brothers, family, friends, and a lot of times described as being like second sons or daughters to your family, you're really going to sit here and say that they are all lying. Well, again, and plus there's been a civil case settled on the issue. But he had to remind me, my husband did, that they don't think they've done anything wrong. They literally, actually do not believe they've done anything wrong. And he wasn't even specifically talking about this family because he himself is not originally from the state either. And he didn't even grow up in the South. I did, but he's like, they have it in their head and truly, literally believe. Not just, hey, I did something and I'm trying to cover it up. They do not believe they've done anything wrong. They somehow believe they're like mythical creatures. I don't know. I believe they're, I don't freaking know. But that made it make a lot more sense to me. And God, why can't I just log into my account on TikTok? It is literally, thank you. No. Lord, I'm trying to pull them up. The only thing I do not like about what this forensic psychologist said, and someone mentioned it in his comments, and I'm glad they did because I wanted to say something, but it's just like a personal thing. Please don't play. 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 Okay, you're not. But are you kidding me?
Mr. Rasmussen,
Oh,
you
sorry. But he goes on to compare Alec being a family annihilator to women who have suffered from either postpartum psychosis or depression and who have taken their loved ones' lives. And Jesus, mother, why? No, shut up. God, I freaking hate that. Sorry, but no. I'm not trying to say that what these women have done is right, but I don't believe it should be compared. Believe anyone who suffers that type of mental illness their brain is being tricked into what they believe. And I could go on and on about that. I don't understand how the husband left the house. I personally believe he's at least half to blame. But two different states of mind. One's a medical condition, and I think a psychologist should know that. Having postpartum depression or psychosis is an actual medical condition. Whereas Alex just evil. So no. The defense did not say that. This forensic psychologist that I've seen on TikTok said that. He was defining a family annihilator, what that means, how Alec fits into that mold, and why the defense may have, I say defense, why the state prosecution brought that up. Because if you remember when Alec was on the stand, the second day toward the end of him being cross-examined, Creighton Waters asked Alec, "Are you a family annihilator?" And it seems like a lot of people online are like confused as to why he brought it up. Well, for one, he's straight up asking him, did you kill them? Which, why wouldn't you in that opportunity? And when you've got your person you've charged with these crimes on the stand and you're at the trial and he's decided to testify, why wouldn't you straight up ask him? I think it'd be dumb not to. But it also sets up, if I could, again, my TikTok is being dumb or I'm being dumb. It's almost like foreshadowing is what the forensic psychologist on TikTok is describing and why the state brought it up. He sees it fitting into the closing arguments. So he did two different things on that TikTok. He described why the state may be bringing it up, and he defined what a family annihilator is. And when he defined what a family annihilator is, he used the comparison of what was the Yates lady, and then the most recent mom, who had stuff. I don't really like talking about that because I get real pissed off about a lot of that stuff. It's a horrible thing. It's a horrible tragedy and shouldn't have happened. And she is to blame. However, I do believe that it's a medical condition, and I do believe her husband should also be found at fault because he knowingly left her. And I don't care if she told him to go pick up the food. I don't care. My opinion is he is half to blame. So he just knew all of his house of cards were falling. In my opinion, nothing like postpartum depression. I agree with Stacy very much. I'm gonna try to pull this up one more time. I also had to Google how to spell corner earlier because I didn't know if it was ER or OR. Same thing with lavender. I never know if it's AR or ER. I just can never get it right. All right, I'm gonna try one more time. Trying to pull up my history. Maybe I can just pull up his name on the phone and see. But I wonder if they're going to, I know he said they have one other witness from what he stated the other day. Pooters did. But I wonder if there is another witness, who is it going to be? And are they going to start closing arguments this afternoon? It looks like they may be able to. Add friends. TikTok better not be finding my damn friends. No. I do not link my damn contacts for a reason. TikTok. TikTok is for strangers on the internet, not people you know. How do I go into my history again? I think, JC, you've done this before. You found it, and you found it without Nikki's help, too. Which may take me a moment, because if it wasn't last night, then no. All right, let me see if I can do this. I'll try to just type in his information somewhere. I just don't remember his name. Oh my gosh. My search history. No. Whoop. There he is. Let me see. So sorry if you hear anything. I would share my screen, but I'm afraid that I would be sharing. Yeah, what is his name? It's great that you have this. What is his name?
So in the brain.
Shush. I didn't permit you to speak yet. Okay. Is this his actual account? If so, that would be Amazeballs. And all right, I think I found it, and I'm going to share. I found this quite interesting. Again, it does, I don't know where she's been, other than, I mean, I've talked to her here and there. I think she must just have a lot going on in regard to life stuff, health issues. But I don't think anything's necessarily wrong. I just think that, you know, she's probably doing what she needs to be done, which is tending more to her in-person life at the moment. All right. Let me go ahead and share this, dude. Nope, make it bigger.
In the last day of the prosecution's cross-examination of Alec Murdaugh, the prosecutor asked him specifically, "Are you a family annihilator?" I thought at that moment they were about to throw a gotcha in there and give the jury a new template through which to interpret Murdaugh's emotional displays and tears, if those are genuine, when talking about his wife and son, specifically his son. They ended up not going there, which I assume they're going to come back to in closing arguments. If they don't, they're dropping a ball on that one. But let's look at how Family Annihilator would change the template in interpreting Murdaugh's emotional display. Again, if that emotional display is genuine and not just something being turned on and off.
Talking about him crying in court.
That Murdaugh is an altruistic family annihilator, meaning he's doing it to save the family from suffering. Doesn't mean that it didn't hurt to do it. Doesn't mean he wouldn't have genuine emotion for the loss. Again, to end some sort of suffering. In this case, the perceived suffering, and again, we're talking about the killer's subjective interpretation of the environment, not objective reality.
Meaning
his view of it was that they were
his
facing
Alex
a
view, not
complete
our
financial
view.
collapse that would strip away
not what we would
the
do.
lifestyle, the baseline lifestyle that they've lived with all their lives. Not only that, but a destruction of the family name, a loss of status, a century of status of the family, basically dirtying the reputation of that family name from something respected in the community, from something likely demonized, saving them from that. A family annihilator usually goes in with the intent to take their own lives as well, whether or not they're able to carry out that part of it.
This is the part I have a problem
on
with.
the emotional impact of carrying out the act, how that does it. Murdaugh does seem to have intended, either at that time or later,
No, he didn't.
to have taken his own life as well.
No, he
Given
didn't.
that police feel the staged murder he attempted later was an attempt at insurance
No, it
fraud,
wasn't.
an
It
insurance
was an
scam
attempt to
that suggests
blame
they did think he intended to take his own
Anthony
life
Cook
there. Why
for
leave the
the
eldest son? Why not
deaths of
include
Maggie and
him?
Paul.
Well, by taking out himself, his wife, and the son who had a court case coming
Sketch
up
that he
against
had
him,
looks
he
exactly
left
like
the oldest
Anthony
son
Cook.
with the final page on the family being the family as victims of just a couple bad eggs who did bad things, leaving Buster with whatever financial resources were left, also potentially preserving the long-term family status rather than something that is generations of corruption, something that is just a couple bad eggs in there who did bad things. So that would be a motivation there. So it is completely possible that he would have done it and still have a strong emotional response to it. Again, Andrea Yates.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop this part.
Basically,
I don't even want to rehear that part, his comparison there. He's again comparing to people who've had postpartum depression or psychosis and being similar emotion, like emotional regret. But yeah, no, I think we can find an actual family annihilator and go from there instead of comparing with people who have medical issues and mental illness. But yeah, let me see if I can find that too. Oh, are we back? Shoot, I didn't know.
The
I'm so
actual
sorry.
hole will expand, but then you lose that hole and it becomes just individual small holes.
So you've got a smaller hole in his chin and a larger hole in his shoulder.
I'm so
Does
sorry,
that
I had them
indicate
muted.
anything?
I
I mean,
didn't know.
am I being too simplistic? Smaller means it's expanding at that point?
Right. Not to be offensive, I think it is a little too simplistic because we also have to look at what's around the wound. But yes, with, again, the totality of everything, this is definitely coming downwards from right to left. The only way I could see larger wound on the left shoulder, smaller wound on the left chin is if you consider this a graze wound. But again, using the totality of everything, the size of this wound, the location of the pellets going down into the shoulder, this is not going left to right.
Okay. Now, let me also ask you this. If the wound is in the head, and why isn't the brain macerated? Why isn't the brain shredded by those pellets? Why does the brain exit the skull, as we saw a minute ago, without being shot to pieces?
Because again, you're having the shot shell,
Take it down. I'm
you know,
sorry.
that's okay. Everything is still within that shot shell as it goes in. The pressure is just going to form around it and push it out. Sometimes you'll see, in my experience, a complete intact brain that may have some holes here and there. Sometimes you'll see a brain that is split in half, and sometimes you will see completely macerated. But from what I saw in the photograph and reading Dr. Reamer's autopsy report, she does state that the brain was received in another bag and that it was, I don't remember the exact words, but that it was severely traumatized.
But no, there's no x-rays of that brain.
There's no x-rays of the brain. I'm sure there are pellets within the brain.
And were there any shots? Do you see any actual autopsy photos of the brain? I mean, just the brain.
No, I saw scene photos, but I did not see autopsy photos of just the brain.
Okay. So you would not necessarily, well, let me back off for just a second. You have actually done autopsies on contact wounds by a shotgun to the head.
Oh, yes.
And what you're telling us is based on that experience?
Well, experience, training, the textbooks. I mean, articles aren't written about it because it's fairly common knowledge.
Okay. And let me do a little housekeeping. I got a number of photos I want to show you that may be used, or were they used by you in you reaching your opinion, okay?
Okay.
Can you come over here so I can?
What else is he trying to admit into evidence that he shouldn't be admitting into evidence? Whew, the two funny things of the day. Absolutely nothing, and oops, I'm not supposed to admit that into evidence. Oh, love it. Alex, stolen money isn't paying for much today.
Your Honor, I intend on showing this. Defendant's Exhibit 169, 168, 161, 160, and 159 to determine whether or not he relied on these to come to the conclusions he's come to. I don't think there's any need to publish them to the jury at this point. And I believe the state consents to their admission.
No, objection.
If I might proceed. Would you look at these photos, please?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Are those photographs, autopsy photographs or x-rays that you relied on in reaching the opinions you've expressed to this jury today?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, we'd offer these into evidence.
No objection.
They're admitted.
For the record, we're offering Defendant's Exhibit 160, 161, 168, 169, and 159 and 160. I think I already said 160. Give those to you. And again, all under seal, please. So just a couple more questions. 162 is already in evidence, right? Okay. So let me hand that back to you before I do that. So the opinions you've given here today, you've given to a degree of medical certainty more probably than not.
Yes.
And you would agree with me that you're not an expert on the vectors of this shot, either one of any of these shots, except you talked about a probability on Maggie on the two shots that go down, right?
Right. I want to make sure I'm answering correctly. So I'm an expert on the directionality within the body that projectiles go, entrance, exit, the direction within the body. As far as, and I think this is what you're asking, as far as crime scene and reconstructing things of that sort, that's not my area of expertise.
Okay, but you have given an opinion. I want to make sure that we all understand what you've said. You've given an opinion that Dr. Reamer was wrong on the shot that blew Paul's brain out of his skull and it landed on the ground, correct?
That's correct.
And you believe it was a shot in the back right of the skull,
Yes, sir.
and you believe that it was going through his skull, out his neck, and into his arm,
Into the left side. Yes, sir.
left side. And we found a number of x-rays showing the pellets. We've seen forensic evidence that you, in the normal course of your work, rely on to draw opinions, right?
That's correct.
And you've done that thousands of times.
Yes, sir.
And let me make sure that the jury understands this. When you're submitted materials like we submitted to you in cases, you report, are you paid to give an opinion, a specific opinion?
No, I wouldn't accept a case if someone said this is what we want.
Okay. And you come to conclusions based on the materials given to you?
Absolutely.
And that's your conclusion here today?
The conclusions that I've stated, yes.
Beg the court's indulgence.
That's a little annoying because there are x-rays. He just didn't see an x-ray of the brain, apparently.
You've indicated and testified that would be
Hold on, I'll just type.
blood, brains, pieces of skull, other material would blow out the direction of the hole, and the muzzle of the gun would have been pressed against the skull, correct?
The muzzle of the end of the barrel of the shotgun would be pressed against the skin firm enough that there'd be pressure onto the skull. And then you would have blowback as the skull opened up.
And that blowback would follow the barrel of the gun?
Well, it would come back up the barrel of the gun, but it would also distribute.
Right. And what about the barrel of the gun? Would there be biological material jammed into that?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry?
Absolutely.
Okay. So there would be brains, blood, skull, whatever, jammed back up the barrel of the shotgun.
Right. What we say is biologic material.
Okay. Thank you. Please answer any questions Ms. Good has.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I realized I typed the word narrative. I'm okay. I'm not being held hostage. I just could not think of another word. I need a thesaurus. I wonder if the defense is trying to bait the state into like mentioning being paid because so that they can bring up.
Hi, Dr. Eisenstadt.
Good morning.
Now, when you first started your testimony, you talked a little bit about time of death.
Yes.
Is it the pathologist's job to determine the time of death?
Depends on the jurisdiction. But pathologists are trained in talking about what's consistent or what's not consistent. But I believe, like in Georgia, I believe here in South Carolina, the coroner, in the majority of counties, the coroner goes to the scene and does the investigation. So I don't know how it works here, but there's no doubt that part of a forensic pathologist's training and knowledge is determining cause of death from information given to, time of death from information given to them.
And it's not customary for a pathologist to actually go out to the crime scene, is it?
Oh, I'd say more often than not, the pathologist does not go out.
All right, and now in this case, because this appeared to be homicides, the county coroner would be the one to have requested an autopsy. Is that right?
That's my understanding. I definitely in Georgia, it's my understanding here, yes.
And Dr. Reamer performed the autopsy here,
Yes, ma'am.
and she performed an independent autopsy.
She did.
Did you perform an autopsy of either of the victims in this case?
I did not.
And you relied on, I think you testified that Dr. Reamer's report, x-rays, crime scene photos, and autopsy photos in determining your opinion.
That's correct.
And you were hired, right?
Yes, I was.
And you were here on Friday, weren't you?
I was.
So that would mean you've made over $10,000 in evaluating or taking part in this case.
At the end of the day, that's correct.
Did you do a report?
I was not asked to do a report, no.
Wouldn't you agree that a report would have been helpful to explain the scientific methods or investigation that you used to come to your conclusions?
Oh, different jurisdictions do it differently. So I have no idea how it's done here. But I mean, my report would have been exactly the same as my testimony. So I guess it would be on paper instead of, verbally.
Well, you saw Dr. Reamer's report, and that was actually entered in evidence, right?
Yes, I did.
All right, you spoke a little bit about Maggie and
Yes, that's
her
correct.
autopsy. And I believe you said in your testimony that Maggie's shooter could be taller than Maggie. Is that right?
Oh, no, that's not what I said.
What did you say?
No, what we were talking about was if Maggie's gunshot or rifle wounds to the top of her head and to the side of her head were with her standing up, that would have to be somebody at an elevated position. So I didn't give an opinion that the shooter had to be taller because we talked about how she could be bent over.
But an elevated position could mean the shooter was taller, right?
Oh, but it could be that the shooter was taller, but that would still have to be somebody at an extremely elevated position shooting down. I'll leave it at that.
And you said that determining trajectory is not something that you do.
At the scene, that's correct. On the body, that's what I do all the time.
All right, let's move on to Paul. Would you agree that when a gun is shot, a lot of energy and momentum is generated, and that momentum and energy tears through a person's body?
Depending on the range of fire, the type of ammunition, yes, I agree with that.
And when pellets are shot, they spread out.
Eventually, yes.
So if Paul was shot in the back of the head and those pellets start spreading out, did they come back together when they exited this way?
No, but that's where we're talking about the same thing as range of fire. So those pellets, if you go from the top of the head down to here, this is about 6 inches. So we have about 6 inches. We have maybe a foot, right, from here to here. Those pellets can still be together and starting to spread out. So no, they're not going to go out and come back together. Some, that's why I was talking about that billiard ball effect. Some, if you hit that cue ball, the side ones are going to pop out and the middle ones will still be together. So no, they won't go out and come back, but I have no issue with 1 foot from here to here and having still a whole cluster of pellets going through.
But the pellets would be closer together when they first enter the body.
For a certain distance, yes.
And we also talked about soot or stippling. Now, in Dr. Reamer's report, she does note that there was soot and stippling for certain injuries, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And she did not note that for the injury to the shoulder and head.
Agreed.
Okay. And wasn't the top of Paul's skull missing?
Yes, it was.
And Paul's face, it wasn't blown off, was it?
It was not.
His brains weren't splattered all over the floor?
Well, it depends on what you mean by that, but his brain left his head and ended up being on the floor. There were some smaller pieces in other areas and then a large piece in one area.
I'm going to show you what's been entered as tapes 24 under seal. Okay, I don't know if you can tell from this picture.
I can.
Can you?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that brain look macerated or splattered everywhere?
No, but that brain has been extruded from the head. And there are, when you do a zoom in on it, unfortunately no x-ray, but when you zoom in on it, you can tell that there's injury to the brain. But the brain, yes, I agree, it's not macerated.
And there were pellets on the floor of that feed room.
That's my understanding.
I'm going to show you tapes 26 and 43. Do you see that as the door to the feed room?
I do.
And states 43. Is that blood spatter on top of the door?
That looks like blood spatter at the top of the door, yes.
And no blood spatter out there on the sidewalk from his brain being blown out from his head and his face being left intact, right?
Right, the brain would come out the top of the head.
And it's on the top of that door.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
And the blood spatter is on the top of the door.
Right, that's blowback. That's from here, the pressure pushing it backwards.
And did you see any crime scene photos of the feed room where there were some containers on a shelf?
I did.
So the containers on the shelf, I believe, would be to the right side on this picture.
Looking at the picture, I believe, yes, inside on the right, there's some shelves with a number of items on it.
And was there kind of a demarcation line showing blood going to the top of the feed room?
Oh, I don't recall. And in all honesty, you're starting to get into an area that's not my area of expertise.
Into trajectory, is that right?
Outside of the body, yes.
And did you determine the manner of death for these victims?
I did.
What was that?
For both of them, it was homicide.
Thank you, nothing further.
Anything further?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you. You may step down.
Excused, thank you.
Your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Defense calls Tim Palmbach to the stand, please.
Morning. Raise your right hand, left hand on the Bible. Do you affirm the testimony about to give the court in this trial shall be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Take a seat in the witness stand. You can adjust the mic if you have to. State your name again for the record. Spell your last name.
Timothy Palmbach, Palmbach.
Mr. Palmbach, will you tell the jury where you're from and what do you do?
I'm from Connecticut. I've been up in that state for the majority of my life. Most of my career has been in the Connecticut State Police, and I actually started out in a row position. Then I was transferred into a major crime unit, and from there, I spent a good deal of my time in the lab. I retired as a major from the lab in 2004, and at that time, I was head of the whole division of scientific services for the state of Connecticut.
Right.
I then went back to the school, which was my alma mater, which was University of New Haven, to teach. I took the chair of forensic science position, which is a large forensic science program with both graduate and undergraduate students. And I managed that program as well as teaching. In addition to that, I was doing some degree of consultation, expert consultation, but not much just because of the volume of work that I had. In August of last year, the university offered me an early retirement incentive package, which I gladly accepted. And so now I just teach part-time, assist with a couple of the grants that I had, and have a little bit more time to do consulting.
When you were with the Connecticut Forensic Science Division, who did you work under? Who did you train under?
Dr. Henry Seeley.
And who is Dr. Lee?
Within the field, he is one of the original founding fathers and very, very well regarded as holistically as a forensic scientist, but very much so as a crime scene reconstruction expert.
And And you mentioned in addition to teaching and your prior work in the field, you currently do consulting as well?
Yes, I do.
Before we get to that, do you hold any certifications in your field of specialty?
So certifications, I have memberships. It's more of a membership organization than a certification.
Sure. So what's the American Academy of Forensic Science?
Sure. American Academy of Forensic Science is like the American Medical Academy or American Bar Association. It's kind of the large entity that all the professionals belong to. You have to be a practicing practitioner in good faith in order to do that. And then you go, it ranks from an associate member to a member. And eventually, if you meet the criteria, you can be a fellow. So I'm a fellow of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences.
And what is the International Association for Identification?
So the IAI, or International Association of Identification, they tend to have membership and certification in areas like fingerprint examination as well as crime scene analysis.
And you're a member of that
I am.
association? And are you a member of the International Association?
Okay, guys, I apologize. I have to run. I'm going to continue listening to this while I'm doing errands and doing adult things, but I'm curious to see if they're going to do closing arguments today. Thank you guys for watching for me, or with me, not for me. Weird. But I might be back on later this afternoon if I can, to, especially if they do closing arguments. I hope I'm around. But anyway, I was watching Law and Crime Network, and again, I wish I knew I can stream while on like my phone or iPad, whatever. I don't have an iPad, but I'll just say that. But I can't screen share. So I don't know. It's annoying. So I just put you in my pocket and carry you with me. You could be all warm and cozy. Also weird. All right. I will see you guys later. Go watch the rest of it. I'll be watching and listening. And, remember, you can't get a temperature or a time of death through an armpit.